there are some feasts which link us in a particular way to the early centuries of our faith. That of Santa Lucia, St. Lucy, is one. The Holy Virgin, tortured, it would seem, also with the gouging out of her eyes, at Syracuse, and hugely venerated on this day there, as at Venice, where her body is, at the big church of Santa Lucia. Brings us back to the time of the persecution of Diocletian, the beginning of the 300s. Many of our brethren were lost at that time, and we have some ancient names appearing to this day in the Roman canon, and Lucia is one. We remember how grace was given to these holy maidens to be faithful to Christ. Often they were desired by pagans for the wrong reason, and they knew that consecrated virginity was of a higher order and would not settle for a second best. Indeed, it is curious to see how, from the earliest times, the advantages of holy virginity were perceived by the early Christians. When writing to the Corinthians, we find that the Apostle Paul indicates that there are huge advantages from being free. All the energies of the soul go to the love and service of the Lord. He is writing in the context of the anticipated return of the Lord, but given the brevity of life anyway, it is perennially true. There are massive advantages of, precisely as the Church has indicated for the clergy, being entirely consecrated to the love of Jesus Christ. The availability that gives also for the people of God is massive. That is one reason historically why the West was more successful in missionary work. Its clergy were free to move. And alas, we see in our time how marriage does not solve problems as quickly as people might think. New problems come in, especially in our own day, with the offspring going in all directions. The problems that come with adolescence are huge. It's all stress for parents. All that is avoided by consecrated virginity. And it would seem also that there is evidence that those who opted for that form of Christian consecration were, when it came to baptism at Easter, the first to be immersed. It was a category already recognized by the early Christians. We need to ask our questions also before and not after, for many rush into huge adventures which lead sometimes to illegitimate children and strange families coming out of nowhere, bits of family, before they realize the consequences for a whole life. These are massive steps. And the Lord knows what is good for us. All that domain is under His authority, and we need His advice. We need a listening ear and not be ruled by passion which is often very blind and short-sighted. Life is very short, and there is more peace in absence of massive stress and worry than in having many things on earth. We think of St. Francis of Assisi, who was so free to fly, even though he was well able to love. We think of the Celtic saints who went in pilgrimage for Christ all over Europe. We think of all those who have been satisfied with their lot, Jesus Christ alone. And on this particular day we think of those who are not able to rejoice in some of the things that we take for granted, notably the blind. People who are blind seem to develop more acuteness in their other senses to make up for it. I heard here years ago a little girl who was completely blind, and she would put out her hands to feel one's face because she felt and saw by her hands. But she was content with her lot, and indeed she would help with the little ones, able well to feed a little baby, even though she herself could not see the baby ever. And we grumble at the slightest thing. Those who die having been born blind, 1 second after death begin to see, because they do not depend anymore on the senses, the physical senses, to perceive. The soul sees directly, and also without distraction. But we can sharpen our senses, and if we learn to be receptive and passive, we can begin to see things that when we're noisy and emittive, we do not see. We can observe, and we can see what the soul is made of, somewhat, if we look hard inside. Those who emit a lot block out so much. Those who are calm and observant have another form of vision, and we can participate also somewhat in the vision of God when we ask specifically for that gift of the Holy Spirit, the gift of knowledge. And those who know a lot don't immediately shout it out. They are serene in their possession of the truth, which doesn't depend on decibels for its power of conviction. Indeed, a serene soul is far more disarming than a noisy one, and sometimes far more convincing. Oh.